Teval the Balanced Scale is a Sultai player's wet dream. This thing is full of value. It mills you, it generates tokens, it ramps you, it's got combo potential, and all of that for a 4-mana 4/4 flyer, and it's a dragon to top it off. Love it. Before we hop into this video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It's so easy. You're not going to want to miss my other First Thoughts videos and the rest of the content Tarkir stuff as it rolls out. Let's hop into this. We're going to start off with the combo potential. There's a really easy way to go infinite here that generates both infinite tokens and infinite mana, and all it requires is your commander, one zombie to be in play, and these two cards. Phyrexian Altar, that's got to be in play, but Gravecrawler could either be in play or in your graveyard. You can cast Gravecrawler for 1 black when it's in your graveyard if you control a zombie. Luckily, the tokens that Teval makes are zombies, so you can cast Gravecrawler from the graveyard. When you do, Teval makes a token. You sacrifice Gravecrawler to the Phyrexian Altar, and then you replay it from the graveyard using that 1 black mana you made with the altar, generating you another token. You can do this over and over and over again until you have an infinite number of tokens, and then you can start sacking those tokens to create infinite mana and do whatever you want. There's a handful of cards that are really powerful in Teval because they trigger Teval twice, just based on the way that the card functions and how the spell actually resolves. So those cards are really interesting and really powerful for this deck. You have Arami of the Deadtide, which works great when you're trying to reanimate something big. You first, to the cost, have to exile cards from their graveyard, triggering Teval, and then a creature in your graveyard gains Encore. When you cast that creature from the graveyard, you trigger Teval again. Dread Return, you're both returning something from your graveyard to the battlefield and exiling Dread Return from your graveyard, triggering Teval twice. From the Catacombs and Uro both trigger Teval twice because you have to exile stuff to the escape cost. From the Catacombs will then reanimate something, triggering Teval again, while Uro will leave your graveyard and come into play, triggering Teval again. Golgari Thug can leave your graveyard by dredging, and when it dies, you put something from your graveyard on the top of your library, triggering Teval again. Grim Discovery, because of the way this card is templated, you will first return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and then return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. So if you choose both, you will trigger Teval twice. Similar to Grim Discovery, you have Urborg Repossession. If you kick it, because of the way this card is templated, you will have 2 triggers. Undead Butler. It both mills you, and when it dies, you can exile it from your graveyard, triggering Teval, and return something to your hand, triggering Teval. And lastly, Winter's Cynical Opportunist. Very similar to From the Catacombs, where you have to exile cards from your graveyard as a cost to reanimate something else. As you can see from that category, you've got a few different ways that cards can leave your graveyard. Specifically, there's 4 zones cards can go from your graveyard to, which will trigger Teval, and they're pretty easy to get off. One of them being to the library is less available, so we're not going to talk too much about going from the graveyard to the library, but you can trigger Teval by cards going from your graveyard to the battlefield, graveyard to exile, and graveyard to hand. Let's start off by talking about the graveyard to hand. You have your regrowth effects like Balagan Recovery and Regrowth, which are fantastic, especially because Balagan Recovery fits into your mana base. There's also Eternal Witness for a similar effect. Ghost of Ramirez de Pietro seems pretty powerful here. Gollum Patient Plotter can also fill your graveyard as it's going to your hand. Oversold Cemetery, which after a little bit of milling becomes a free way to just get a card back every turn, triggering Teval. Phyrexian Reclamation, which you can dump mana into to trigger Teval. Tortured Existence, which is a perfect card for this deck. You pay 1 black, discard a creature card to return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's essentially 1 black, switching a creature in your graveyard in your hand, triggering Teval, and you can do that over and over and over again at instant speed. And Witherbloom Command. It mills you while letting you return something from your graveyard to your hand, along with another mode. You can still have it do any of the other 3 modes along with that and trigger Teval. Now let's talk about cards that move stuff from your graveyard to exile to trigger Teval. Agatha's Soul Cauldron. If you have a lot of creatures with activated abilities, this seems like a sweet include, very powerful card. Curse Cloth Wrappings. This is an auto include in the deck, and it's really cool. Note that that second ability doesn't need to work with zombies. You can give any creatures in your graveyard Embalm, and they'll enter as a zombie, triggering Teval to make a zombie token, so you get 2 zombies out of this. And it gives all your zombies +1/+1. I love this card in this deck. It seems really powerful. There's a whole zombie theme that you can do in Teval, and I'll be talking about that towards the end of the video. Deathrite Shaman, the 1-mana planeswalker. This thing can do everything, and it all involves triggering Teval. Emperor of Bones, pretty cool way to reanimate things while also triggering Teval every turn or hitting on your opponent's graveyards. A lot of these are also just ancillary graveyard hate for your opponents, so that's a huge amount of upside. Ghost Vacuum, Lazotep Query, which also makes zombie tokens, which is sweet. Farika, God of Affliction, Relic of Progenitus, Scavenging Ooze, the Scarab God, another way to make zombie tokens. Titan's Nest, which instant speed lets you exile cards from your graveyard for no cost. Amazing. And an unlimited amount of time. So if you have a huge graveyard, you can just exile everything one at a time to Teval, creating a huge army of zombies at instant speed. And Unlicensed Hearse. Let's go through that last section of this category, being cards going from your graveyard to the battlefield to trigger Teval. So a lot of reanimation stuff. Chthonian Nightmare, really sweet. Kind of works like Tortured Existence in this, where you can trade 1 for 1 over and over and over again to continue to get benefits of triggering Teval and any ETB effects. Crucible of Worlds, you're going to be milling a ton of cards, you might as well play lands from your graveyard. Crucible of Worlds is actually my favorite card, in case you didn't know. Marin of Clan Neltoth, Necromancy, Ramanop Excavator, Reanimate, Reassembling Skeleton, the Master Transcendent, this one is awesome, it even helps you mill, and Victimize. Teval's not the only card that you can put in this deck that care about cards leaving your graveyard. There's a whole bunch of other cards that will have additional triggers when cards leave your graveyard, and it seems really worth throwing those in. Amzu to make a bunch of large bugs. Chalk Outland can make tokens and clues. Defiled Crypt for some more tokens. Same with Desecrated Tomb. Dredger's Insight can gain you some life, and it mills you. Insidious Roots is absolutely disgusting in this deck, arguably one of the best cards for this deck. You'll be making a absurd amount of plants, and those plants will just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they can be used as mana dorks. Love it. Sir Conrad to drain out your opponent slowly works really well on both the mill side and the leaving the graveyard side, so you get double drain every time something goes to the graveyard and then you exile it. Thran Vigil to make your board bigger, and Tormod Desecrator for some more zombie tokens. Obviously in a deck like this, mill is going to be very important, so let's talk about some ways you can mill your library to enable all of your other shenanigans. Altar of Dementia, one of the best mill cards there is, especially in a sacrificey deck. This can put in a ton of work. Cemetery Tampering, Crawling Infestation, and Crawling Sensation both mill you and generate you tokens, which are perfect for this. Deranged Assistant along with Mannequin are mana dorks that mill you. Doom Whisperer, just pay life and mill. Technically it's actually card selection too, so you can pick a card to end up being the top of your library when everything is said and done, based on how much life you pay. Gossip's Talent, Grizzly Salvage, Master of Death, which is pretty nice here. It's a little mill and 3 mana, so it's a little heavily costed for that. However, it does trigger Teval when you bring it back to your hand. My favorite self-mill card, Mesmeric Orb, Molt Tender, which both mills and triggers Teval while adding mana. Nuclear Fallout, board wipe that can make you mill a ton of cards. Nyx Weaver, which can bring something back for you in the late game, which triggers Teval. Out of the Tombs, Path of Discovery, which will trigger every time you make a zombie. Ripples of Undeath, amazing card. 6, I love 6. Great for milling, great for putting lands into your graveyard to then get back with Teval, and it lets you recast things from the graveyard that you didn't want to lose. This is a perfect card for this deck. Sludge Titan, Snarling Gorehound, which triggers off all those zombies, Stitcher Supplier, Tato Farmer, Binding of the Titans, which mills and gets stuff back, triggering Teval, And the Wise Mothman. You can throw the Wise Mothman in here. There's a couple of cards I wanted to mention. Also, do something when you mill a card. Sidisi Brood Tyrant. More zombies. Perfect. That's what this deck wants. And Myco Tyrant. A lot more tokens as well here. Another way you can kind of build this deck is lands matter, because you are getting lands back with Teval whenever it attacks. There's a lot of different land synergies you can throw into this deck. I mean, for the very least, fetch lands are fantastic here because you can sack the fetch, goes to the graveyard, get it back. Landfall, though, could be very good inside of a deck with this commander. AC, Tyrant of Dire Strait. Additional lands and you draw cards. Love this. Blossoming Tortoise, it even mills you. Echoing Deeps can copy a land that's in your graveyard. Field of the Dead, more zombie tokens. Head Shredder, who needs Teval when you can just mill and get all your lands back with Head Shredder? Love it. Just a secondary card for that similar ability. Life from the Loam seems like an auto include in this deck. Dredge is so good as a way to mill your deck. This will also get lands out of your graveyard, triggering Teval, while also triggering Teval for the Dredge coming back to hand. Double trigger Teval, love it. Lotus Field, good way to put lands into your graveyard. Oracle Moldiah, Rampaging Baloths, Retreat the Hagra, Scoot Swarm, Shifting Woodland, Springheart Nantuko, Strip Mine, really nice when you got that Crucible of Worlds, extra lands per turn, being able to strip mine like 3 times in a turn, triggering Teval all 3 times, love that. Tatiova, the Gitrog monster, can draw you a ton of cards. Tireless Provisioner, along with Tracker. Turn Timber Sower can make a bunch of tokens. Urza's Saga, great land to be getting back over and over and over again with Teval. Wasteland, and Zendikar's Royal. The last major category I want to talk about is zombies. This could make a really cool zombie commander. After that, we'll be talking about the one-off cards, which is a very important category. It's a lot of cards that just seem extremely powerful in the deck generically. They don't fit in any specific category. But first, zombies. We got a lot of cool zombie stuff. Teval will be able to pump out a board of zombies very easily and very quickly. So zombie synergies seem strong here. Cemetery Reaper to make them bigger and also trigger Teval. Death Baron. Diregraph Captain. Diregraph Colossus. Endless Ranks of the Dead. Geralf Visionary Stitcher. Giza and Geralf, which triggers Teval. Giza the Hellraiser. Gleaming Overseer. Hordewing Scab. Kindred Discovery. Lord of the Accursed. Lord of the Undead. Lost Monarch of Ifnir, which both mills and triggers Teval, which is awesome. Necro Duality. Noxious Ghoul. Prophet of the Scarabs. Reflections of Letjara. Relentless Dead, which is great with Teval. Rooftop Storm. Shepherd of Rot. Tomb Tyrant. Undead War Chief. Underrealm Lich, which helps to fill your graveyard. Unholy Grotto, which triggers Teval. Wand of Orcus. Worn Soul Trader. White of the Reliquary, along with Bloodghast, could be disgusting together. Bloodghast, I know, not a zombie, but really, really good inside of this deck if you have sack outlets like White. And Zol Asher lets you cast zombie cards from the graveyard, again, triggering Teval. Alright, let's move on to that last category, one-off cards. Amulet of Vigor, Spelunking, and Tiller Engine all make it so those lands you get back with Teval enter untapped, which, fantastic. Come Back Wrong. It's a removal spell that can also trigger Teval, which I like a lot. Cryptolith Rite, turn those zombies into mana. Doubling Season and Parallel Lives to get double the number of tokens. Guiltleaf Archdruid. This is a disgusting card. Teval just so happens to make zombie druids. You can use those zombies to steal all of your opponent's lands. I love that. Grist Voracious Larva. Grolnok, pretty funny frog here. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard, you exile it with a croak counter on it. That triggers Teval. And you can play cards from exile with croak counters on it. Karavek the Punisher. Really nice if you're in a heavy removal build or a way to commit a lot of crimes. Because you can cast cards from your graveyard with Karavek and trigger Teval. Muldrotha, cast cards from your graveyard and trigger Teval. Noxious Revival, 0 mana instant speed way to trigger Teval and get something back from your graveyard. Awesome. Psychic Frog can both fill your graveyard, draw you cards, and trigger Teval. Savvy Trader, if you're going to cast stuff from your graveyard, this seems very powerful. Same thing with Secrets of the Dead. We have another Druid synergy card with Seton Krosan Protector. You can tap your Druids for mana, aka your zombies. Shigeki. I love Shigeki in this type of deck. You're able to channel it to get a bunch of stuff back from your graveyard, which triggers Teval, or you can mill cards while also ramping. It's great. Awesome. Volrath Stronghold is perfect for this deck. Very similar to Unholy Grotto, however, this works with any creature card. Auto include. Wither and Bloom is a removal spell that you can then remove from the graveyard, which is pretty nifty. And Wonder. If you mill this, all your stuff's going to have flying. Perfect. That's everything I have for Teval the Balanced Scale. Let me know in the comments if you plan on building Teval, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, everybody.